Good afternoon, folks. We are super glad you joined us this afternoon for our College of Letters and Science welcome presentation and panel. We'll give it another few seconds, maybe a minute or so to let more people roll in, and then we will get started. But before we get started, I just want to remind you, if you're here for this session, to go ahead and use that Q&A feature. There's a button down at the bottom of your screen, says Q&A. So if you have questions, and I hope you do, that's why we're here today, to ask questions of us. We have faculty on the panel, we have some advising staff, and we have students. So if you've got questions, feel free to ask them at any time. We may be able to address them as we go, but by and large, we'll probably answer them towards the end when the panelists get introduced. So we'll let another few people roll in here and then we'll get started. Okay, Stephen, thanks for that question. Yes, we are recording this, and we will share the link to the recording. If you accessed it through our landing page, so the College of Letters and Science landing page, that is also where we will provide the link. But if not, we will also be sharing it by email after the presentation ends. We need about a day or two for it to be captioned. And then once that's done, we will share the link for you. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. I will just start by introducing myself. I am Mark Von Cannon. You may have seen my name in some of the messages you've gotten. I'm the Director of Recruitment, Student Recruitment and Career Development for the college. And on our session today, or in our session today, we have some faculty members, we've got some staff and some student peer advisors. Who will be answering your questions as we go and at the end. But to start, I wanted to just give you a little bit of information about the college, about the campus, and then once we go through some of these slides, I'll have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll start taking your questions, okay? All right, so why don't we start by I'm going to start by asking you a question. So I want to find out who is actually joining us today. So hopefully you can now see a question. I just wanted to get a sense of who we have joining us. So are you a transfer student? Are you a first-year freshman student? Parents? Everybody, maybe some prospective students. This will give us a good idea of sort of who we're talking to and maybe what kind of questions to expect. All right, give this another second or two. Awesome, perfect, good. All right, so it looks like we are mostly talking to admitted transfer students. That makes sense since we messaged you all directly and invited you to this session. So thanks for coming. I have another question for you. Let's see if I can pull that up here. I'm curious if any of you have been to campus or not. Wow, okay. That's awesome. So it looks like it's about a 60-40 split. That's interesting. Okay, good. So about 60% of you have been to campus. That's great. So you are familiar with our layout, the size of the campus, those kinds of things. So that's perfect. Because the next thing I wanted to show you is where we are. If you haven't visited campus, hopefully you know where we're at. We are, about 15 miles west of Sacramento. Great proximity to the state's capital. I'm about an hour to an hour and a half from the San Francisco area. about an hour and a half from San Francisco, the city, but about an hour or so from the Bay Area. And we're also about an hour and a half from Lake Tahoe. So if you like going into the city, or if you like being outdoors, Davis is a great place to be in terms of our proximity to a lot of those options. We're also really, really close to the Sacramento airport. So if you're not from the area, getting in and out of Davis is pretty easy. The Sacramento airport is only about 15 minutes away, and it's accessible by the YOLO bus, which is free for students. Something you may have heard is that UC Davis is ranked fifth among all public universities in the United States, and that's based on a Wall Street Journal Times higher education college ranking. So we're pretty proud of that. We're extremely proud of the fact that we are ranked third for schools meeting the American dream for students. So that's a New York Times College Access Index indicator. It's based on a combination of basically the number of lower and middle income students and how much it costs to go here. So we're ranked third for US universities doing the most for the American dream. That's another ranking we're proud of. So gosh, if you visited campus, you know how big we are, and you know that we're also a big campus in terms of how many students we have. We've got roughly 30, I think we're around 35,000 undergraduates at UC Davis. So you can expect that there are lots of ways to get involved on campus, and 800 or more, to be exact, student clubs and organizations. So those include things like religious and faith-based clubs and organizations, political-based organizations, music and sports. We have a pretty strong Greek life presence on campus. And then, of course, we have the academic and honor societies as well. So when I say there are over 800 ways to find, fund, and find yourself, it really is, there are lots of opportunities. But if you don't find the club or organization that meets your needs, it's also relatively easy to start your own club and organization. I think you need two, maybe three other members to create an organization, but it's otherwise pretty simple. So a little bit more about the college. We consider ourselves, the College of Letters and Science, we consider ourselves the beating heart of the campus, the liberal arts and sciences of the campus. And what I mean by that is we have over half of the majors that are offered at UC Davis, and they really do span all the disciplines. So we have majors in the arts, like art studio, music, theater and dance, cinema and digital media, to humanities majors like English and the foreign languages and religious studies and the ethnic studies. And of course, we have social sciences like communication and linguistics and psychology or philosophy, all the way down to the foundational sciences like chemistry, physics, math, and geology. So when I say we're the beating heart of the campus, you can bet that every student at UC Davis takes one or more classes in the College of Letters and Science. And we feel like that's a pretty special thing. So we do have some unique programs, undergraduate majors and minors. Our ethnic studies programs just celebrated their 50th year anniversary. Our ethnic studies are comprised of majors including African American and African studies, Asian American studies, Chicana and Chicano studies, and Native American studies. And those all were conceived back in 1969. So they just celebrated their 50th anniversary. We are also home to the only fashion design program in the UC system. The design program at UC Davis is comprehensive. So we have students who are pursuing fashion, but also pursuing graphic design, interior, furniture. We're the only comprehensive design program in the system, which is pretty cool. So, and then if you're looking at all of the minors that we offer, we have some pretty cool ones, including human rights, oceanography, and professional writing, but also Arabic and athletic coaching and history and philosophy of science, just to name a few. And most of our majors actually are also offered as minors. So students can be pursuing additional academic disciplines other than the major that they might be getting as a degree. Okay, so when you're looking outside of the classroom, beyond the classroom, we find that most of our students, or at least more than 50% of our students, conduct research. They're participating in leadership opportunities or internships, and some places that they get involved on campus to get their hands-on experience and apply their knowledge. In our college specifically include the California Lighting and Technology Center, which is the image you see there, the Center for Mind and Brain, Crocker Nuclear Lab, the Pitzer Center Recital Hall, so lots of music spaces and performance spaces and studios. And the Internship and Career Center, which is a campus-wide resource, helps students find jobs on campus, but also internship opportunities. But now looking beyond the campus, students from our college and across campus, really, they're studying in over 40 countries. So they're taking their academics across the world, or then across the causeway, actually, in the UC Center Sacramento. That's an internship program for students. You do not have to be a political science or a history student to be engaging in those kinds of opportunities. Same thing for the UC DC Washington program. That program is not just for students who are looking at politics or looking into those kinds of areas. We have art studio, art history, music, students doing internships in the Washington program. And then other places off campus include the Bodega Marine Lab for our students who may be doing the Earth and Planetary Science major, the Marine and Coastal Science major, or that oceanography minor. And in our college, we believe our faculty are outstanding because they are outstanding. They have lots of these awards. You can see them there: Guggenheim Fellows, we have MacArthur Fellows, Pulitzer Prize winners. The faculty member you see there, Sarah Stewart, she was awarded the MacArthur Fellowship, which is also known as the, sometimes known as the Genius Grant. She's a planetary scientist. She is working to develop new and novel theories about the formation of the Earth and the Moon. She has a lab on campus that was built specifically for her. It's the Shockwave Compression Lab. It simulates violent collisions that form planets. It's crazy. It's way beyond me because I am not a scientist. I'm a social scientist. But just to share a personal note about Sarah, she and I went to high school together back in O'Fallon, Illinois. So, all right. So, like the campus, the college is very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our students come from all 50 states and more than 20 countries. 44% of our students are the first in their families to go to college. And 30% are from underrepresented backgrounds. Okay, so let me, before we go to this slide, I do want to ask another question of you all. And I do see we've got some questions in the Q&A, so that is awesome. And we're going to get to those really quickly here. But Let me ask one more question here. How sure are you of your major? So hopefully you can all see that question. Okay, you can't because you're answering. Perfect. That's great. So what I'm seeing, and I'll end this in another second or so, is kind of what I expected. So I'm going to show you what we got here. So that's sort of what I expected. Most students, well, typically about half of our students really do know what they want to study. But a lot of students still, even as entering transfer students, maybe aren't quite sure, they're still exploring, or maybe they decide they're going to add on a major. So this is pretty typical. I just wanted to see sort of where we were with the group that's joining us today. So so we talk about advising. We take advising really seriously here in our college. We do a comprehensive and we take a comprehensive and holistic advising model. You'll meet with your advisor during, well, you'll meet with an advisor at least once a year. Even as a transfer student, we expect that you'll get a chance to meet with your major advisor and also a college advisor at least once a year throughout your academic career. We have advisors who work with students who are undecided. So some students, even at the transfer level, may not exactly know what they want to study, as we saw in that poll. But we have a team of students who, or team of staff rather, who help students navigate that. And then in the college, in our dean's office, we actually have a dedicated mental health counselor just for our students, and also a case manager who helps our students navigate various support systems throughout the campus. Okay, I have one more question for you, and then we're going to get to your questions. I'm just curious where UC Davis ranks in your choice of schools. We sometimes see that UC Davis is the top choice, but often it isn't, and we expect that. And hopefully we can help move the needle for you a little bit today. Okay, that also looks about right. We usually get a bunch of students who say Davis is their first choice, and then a smattering of second, third, and fourth choice, so that seems about right. Okay, so I think what we'll do now is I'm going to let our panelists jump in. I will let them introduce themselves. We've got Claire Waters, who is a professor of English and also a faculty advisor to the dean of the college. We have Sam Duesdieker, who is an academic advisor in the college. Hannah, Sarah, and Jorge are all students in our college. They are peer advisors for the college and also transfer students themselves. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to let our panelists join us. And then we're going to start taking questions. Okay. Claire, do you want to start by introducing yourself? And then if you'll pass it to Sam, and then Sam, if you'll pass it to the students, we will go from there, and then we'll start those questions. Oh, hold on, Claire. There you go.
Classic.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, hi, I'm Claire Waters. I'm a professor in the English department. I've been at Davis for about 20 years. I'm a medievalist. And it's been a really great place to teach. We have wonderful students, and our transfer students are some of our strongest students. I'm also affiliated with the Classics program. I saw a couple of questions about that. That's a fantastic program on campus as well. Sam?
Hi, my name is Samantha Duesdieker. I'm an academic advisor for the College of Letters and Science, and I'm also an alumni of UC Davis. I graduated in 2012, and I actually was a transfer student from Delta College in the Stockton area. So from the Northern California area. I really enjoyed being a student at Davis, and I look forward to speaking with you all about it. Jorge?
Hello, my name is Jorge Santiago. I'm a political science and history double major, and I transferred to the community college down in SoCal. Sam, or I mean, yeah, Sam.
Sarah, how about you?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am an international student. I'm originally from Indonesia. I am a transfer student, so this is my last year here at Davis. I'm an economics major and a psychology minor, and yeah, I also transferred back in 2018 from Berkeley City College. Hannah?
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a fourth year English major. I transferred from Santa Rosa Junior College. And like Sarah, I'm also graduating this year. So, you know, we're like coming to the end. Sad to leave, but excited to have you.
Great. All right, thanks everybody. We're gonna just go ahead and jump into these questions because there are a lot of them. So how about we there are a couple that seem to be about planning classes. So Sam, I'm gonna let you start with this one, but it looks, you know, I think we're talking about orientation, we're talking about Aggie 101 and Aggie advising. So we've got questions about talking to advisors, about planning classes, but also there was another, there are a handful in here about how to plan for the first quarter and beyond.
So those are all really great questions. As an academic advisor in the college, I primarily help students with planning more college-based requirements. So for those of you that haven't submitted your IGETSI or finished that, make sure that you turn that in so that when you do meet with a college advisor, we can talk about any requirements that are remaining for that IGETSI. I would encourage you to look at it now to see if there's anything that is missing. In your first quarter, you will get an evaluation if you're missing anything from general education. Just kind of speaking more broadly about your major, you will end up meeting with a major advisor at some point, and they will usually have a recommendation of classes that you'll be taking. So that's something that you can kind of expect more with Aggie advising. Each major is going to have specific classes that they're going to recommend for your first quarter. So that would be something to really speak with your major advisor about and make sure that you have set time aside to actually go to that appointment and speak with them.
Perfect. Yeah, so definitely be on the lookout for your Aggie 101 and Aggie advising updates from the orientation office once you submit your statement of intent to register. So we do have a question in here about older students connecting well into campus life. Claire, I'm curious if you have any experience working with maybe non-traditional students and what that has looked like over the time you've been here.
Sure, yeah. We have, I would say for one thing, I wouldn't even always know where somebody is in their 20s. I think we have a lot of students in their 20s, but also older students than that. We have a lot of students who have families, who have kids and are managing that. I found it, I think it's a really nice community here. I think people are very supportive, sort of across various kinds of lines. And it's always really interesting to have somewhat older students in classes because they bring different perspectives. And I think it's helpful both for the instructor, but also for the other students in the class.
Perfect. Any of the students, have you had experience, Sarah, Hannah, Jorge, maybe working with non-traditional or older students in your advising?
I can chime in a little.
Oh, sorry. Well, I am 25, so I'm a little bit older than, not by a whole lot, but I also have friends who are student parents. I have a friend whose about 20 years older than me, and she did on-campus housing with her kids. And I think people at Davis are really nice, and I think it's still, well, actually, I should say this too. The Women's Center on campus, they have resources for student parents. So there's that, but then there's also Transfer and Reentry Center, and just a lot of resources on campus that are designed to help you find community, even if you're what might be considered like a non-traditional student like I am.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Transfer and Reentry Center. I was going to say that that would be a great resource for students. Okay, I think some of you may have clicked want to answer. Sarah, was there a question that you clicked you were going to answer?
A question about study abroad.
Oh, perfect. Do you want to go ahead and take it?
Yeah, so I did study abroad last year before this whole situation. So the question is, do study abroad programs have upper division classes or only lower division? The study abroad program that I took was Writers in Greece, and it's a upper division writings program. So in Greece, so we spent a whole month writing about like Greek culture, and it's a great way to complete my college requirements, because as a transfer you need to complete an upper division writing class. So I did that instead of having to take an entire quarter of UWP 101. So yeah, I think it's pretty common as long as you kind of plan it in advance. I'm not sure if they're gonna host study abroad next year in the summer, but hopefully things are okay then.
Yeah. There are some questions about getting internships and research positions. And since you all were transfer students yourselves, do you want to talk about your experience either finding internship or doing research, or even the positions that you're holding now? What that looked like for you all? Jorge, do you want to start? Oh, hold on, Jorge. We can't hear you.
I was gonna ask if you could repeat the question, because I was reading another question that I was gonna start.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Internships and research and maybe finding jobs on campus, particularly for transfer students who, you know, what are the odds? The question is, what are the odds for an incoming transfer student to maybe find an internship or research, maybe because they haven't had the experience or haven't been able to get in and meet with the faculty? Yeah, do you have experience with that?
So as far as experience in looking into getting internships, I mean, my job itself became an internship when I decided that this one was going to be something that I wanted to go deeper into. And so I think that for transfer students, it can be a little difficult to navigate all the resources that are given to us, and look for the internships and opportunities that would best serve our career. That being said, for me, for example, I leaned heavily on my college advisor. His name is Mark Valenzuela, and he helped me apply for this job. He helped me with a lot of things that I wasn't aware of as a transfer student. So yeah, that's my experience. I don't know if Sarah or Hannah have anything else to add.
I can add on to that a little bit. UC Davis is competitive, but also at the same time, they're open to everyone. Like if you're just working hard for it, it's not going to be that difficult to find an internship that works for you. Also, there's opportunities always. Just you get emails from all kinds of clubs and from the advisor. Like for my economics major, they sent out weekly newsletters, and then sometimes within that newsletter, there's like an opportunity list, and then you just look through it, and then it's always there. So that's a good way to find opportunities for internship or research. For research positions specifically, I think it depends on the professor whether they're open to research, because some professors are focused on lecturing and some are doing research specifically. So it just depends, like maybe take a class with them or approach them during office hours and then talk to them. I don't know, Claire, if you want to talk about it since you're a professor.
I can talk about it a little bit, sure. I want to say there is an internship and career center also that is a great sort of central location for information about this. But I want to echo what Sarah said, that Davis is a really big campus and there are a lot of opportunities. So we have a lot of students, but we also have a lot of professors who really like working with students. So if there's a topic that you're interested in, getting connected, just going to office hours and talking to a faculty member about it, even if it's not maybe in their area or their lab or their field, they would probably be able to help direct you, to how to get started with that.
Great. So we do have a lot of questions about what the fall is going to look like. Claire, I know that there are some working groups that have been convened. Do you want to just talk about what that process has been to date? I know we probably don't have any answers, but at least you can let us know what it's looking like so far and what we're doing to address it.
Sure, yeah. So exactly, as Mark says, there are two working groups of sort of stakeholders from all over campus. One thinking about instruction specifically, what classes will look like, what kinds of options there will be, what the possibilities are, what will be safe. If we're still doing some remote instruction, which seems extremely likely, right, that at least some of it will be there, how to do that in the best way we possibly can. And then there's also an operations working group, which is about things like housing, which I saw some people asked about, and is looking at that exact question of what will be safe, what's manageable, what space does the campus have that can be used in ways that are sustainable in this situation. Obviously, there's so much we still don't know. So they're still thinking really widely about a lot of possibilities, but everybody's really gearing up for it, I guess I would say, to make it work as best we can. We'll be here, we'll be teaching, and we would love it if some or a lot of that could be in person. We know that there are factors that we don't control, and we're gonna sort of do our best.
Right. Okay, thank you, Claire. Yeah, in fact, for everyone who's joining us today, we were asking the same questions to Claire just before we went live. So, okay, we have some questions about maybe double majoring and double minoring. Jorge, you're a double major. Do you want to talk about what that looked like for you? And then Sam, maybe from an advising perspective, you can talk about what the minoring process looks like and all of that. So Jorge, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I came in as a political science major. I got a transfer associate's degree in political science. And so that's how I came into UC Davis. I did not have the intention of double majoring, but as I said before, getting in this job kind of shifted my career path towards a different direction. And so I decided to stay another year. And with that other year, I saw that it was more possible, more manageable for me to add another major, because I'm nearly done with political science. And if I was going to stay another year at UC Davis, I can major. My lamp is acting up. There you go. But if I'm going to stay another year, I might as well do something productive with that academic year and double major in something that I really wanted to do that beforehand. As far as what the process looked like, I started off looking at the department website and looking at all the requirements that I needed to fulfill. Then I looked at my own transcript and see what I've already done that matches those requirements. Then I talked with one of the college counselors or college advisors to see if it was within the college requirements, because there's like a unit cap and different things that I needed to keep in mind. I talked to them to make sure that it was possible. They said, yes, if you follow this plan, it's possible. Then I went to the major department and talked to them to plan out what courses I would need to take and to make sure that I satisfy all the major requirements. And then once that happened, I submitted my petition and waited for it to get approved. And now I'm a double major.
Great. Sam, do you want to talk about maybe the difference between double majoring and adding minors to your academic curriculum and what that process looks like for when you declare a minor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So some of the questions that I've been just seeing as an aside is, do I have time for this? Am I going to be able to do this? Is there space in my schedule for this? The answer is yes. There's space for a lot of different things. What's key and essential in order to make sure you have time for study abroad, you know, internships, double minoring, minors, double majors, is that you just work with your advisors really closely. As long as you're meeting with all of those different departments, you will have time to kind of complete some of those academic goals that you have that are maybe outside of your original major, but are still a heavy interest that you have. Minors is one way to do that. Usually you're completing about 5 courses of upper division in a specific area. There's some kind of nitty gritty about how many classes can overlap, but if there is an area of interest that you have that's outside of your major, you can definitely do that. You'll work with the minor department to make sure that you've fulfilled any prerequisite requirements and that you're taking them in the right sequential order, and that you're meeting the requirements with grades and things of that nature. And a minor petition is usually something you file right before you graduate. So you have all of your time at Davis to explore that. But yes, the answer is you will have time to explore a lot of your academic interests on campus. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Meeting with advising is a really important component to that.
So really quick follow-up to that, Sam. There was a question about minors, say like a social science minor on top of maybe a foundational science major, or vice versa. Does that make a difference?
Not necessarily, no. So even if you're pursuing something that's like history and your minors in chemistry or something, for example, or interchangeable, really what matters with respect to minors is making sure that you've met some of those prerequisite requirements for that coursework, that you're in a position where you can enroll in those classes, that you're passing the classes that you're enrolling for the minor, and then just declaring it before you graduate.
Okay. So there are some questions about clubs on campus. So I know we've all been at home, or at least shelter in place for the last couple of months. How, particularly for the students, how has being involved on campus changed for you? How are you staying connected to your communities, whether it's through your clubs or organizations that you're involved in? How has that looked for you over the last couple of months specifically?
I could speak about this because I'm in an organization called Davis Women in Business. And actually for the whole year, we planned a women's leadership conference, which was supposed to happen in April in person, where speakers like women in all kinds of leadership positions come to UC Davis here at the International Center and talk about their experience. However, of course, we had to switch to a remote conference. So with that, a lot of like organizing. So what I do is we just have weekly meetings. A lot of the events in our club, we just have it over Zoom. So that's what we do. And then for the conference itself, it's just been a YouTube playlist where speakers still record their videos and talk about their own careers and passion. And then they upload it on YouTube. So for everyone to see now, it's like everyone can attend the conference. So that's kind of how we've been switching to a remote, setting with all this going on, but it's definitely still possible. I still attend general meetings and fun activities that our club hosts, and that's just one of the ways I've been staying connected with my club.
Great. Hannah, Jorge, do either of you have experience with that? Like, talk about that?
It's not exactly the same, but I'm in the thesis program, and there are about 15 of us in the cohort, and we're all English majors because it's the honors thesis program for English. And we still Zoom together and we FaceTime together, and we'll like pick a day where we all try to get together and catch up. And because the thesis is a pretty isolated project, so like I'm still meeting with my thesis advisor over Zoom, but having us all be together and support each other, it's kind of a lot like what Sarah said, where it's like we're doing the same thing, we're just doing it remotely, and it helps a lot. It's nice.
Great. So I think the short answer is yes, there will still be clubs and organizations in the fall, even if we find ourselves doing a remote experience again, just like we were for spring quarter. Okay, a question that has gotten a lot of thumbs up is parking on campus. So how about we talk a little bit about what the community of Davis looks like and how people get around, and then let's land on parking. And I mean, obviously right now it's not an issue, but under normal circumstances. So who wants to start with getting around town, getting to and from campus?
So as the only one out of the peers that doesn't own a car, doesn't have a license, the way I get around is I bike to campus, I bike to all my classes. Biking is my life. That's how I get around. And Davis is a wonderful place to do that.
Great.
Yeah, everything is so close to each other, so like you don't really need a car. There's the Unitrans too, which is actually driven by fellow UC Davis students, if you didn't know. But yeah, biking, bus is like, if you don't have a car, it's completely fine. My first year when I transferred, I didn't have a car. I only had it this year, and I actually preferred my year without the car because it was just easier. There's bike parkings everywhere. Just make sure you lock it safely. But yeah, parking, it's interesting because like as students we're encouraged not to park, so we have a different permit than the I think faculty permits, so that it only works at certain hours and it has like limited spots. So the whole campus is really like encouraging you to use a what's the word, polluting method of transportation. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Did you want to add to that, Hannah?
I guess I did park on campus for 1 quarter last year, and it was only because I had an 8 a.m. class. But the thing about Davis and parking like that is that the campus is very large. So I parked my car on one really far side of campus, and then I would end up having to walk 1 mile to my other class and then walk 1 mile back in the rain. And so the bus just is much more practical.
Yeah. Yeah, so for students who maybe live outside of town or commute from Sacramento or West Sacramento or Woodland or Dixon or any of the surrounding communities, we do, just like Sarah said, we offer student permits. Spaces may be a little more limited, but they do stack parking in a lot of our lots now. So the options are there for those who, I think particularly for those who commute from out of town, the options are definitely there. I wouldn't say it's financially it can be a burden, but and it can also take some time to find a spot. I guess it just depends on how flexible you are too, because a lot of the remote lots are open most of the day too. So.
And I was going to also say too, some of those lots that are pretty far off campus, you can also always have like a used bike parked on campus, just so that when you get to campus, you can navigate the campus pretty easily. Just because you're commuting and driving to campus doesn't mean that's your only method of transportation. I know a lot of commuter students that have just like a cheap $50 bike that they leave on campus overnight. And they have a bike permit they maintain regularly, just so that they have a way to get around campus. Because they're going to be there all day, so it can be convenient to have both.
Yep.
Thank you. About parking, after 9 a.m. it gets difficult. Like it gets hard because everyone's on campus. This is when like we're returned to normal times. But yeah, if you want to park on campus, try to get there early or like very late.
Mm-hmm. So we have some questions about research and getting involved in research. Labs and things like that. Claire, do you want to talk from the faculty perspective, from the college, what faculty look for in undergraduates who might want to get involved in research, and what some of the scenarios are for students to find those kinds of opportunities, whether it's, maybe just in office hours or the undergraduate research center or what have you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are a lot of avenues, so I'm thinking even as I start about not forgetting things, but I think it's always, faculty love for people to have students who are excited about the same stuff they're excited about, right? So if you have a class that you're really loving, or if there's a topic that, you know, maybe a couple of people have asked about doing research maybe in a different area, faculty are, I think, generally really happy to hear about that and will help you look for ways to do that. There are some classes that incorporate research experience and practice for sure. I mean, actually a lot of courses do that in different ways, but I'm thinking about ones that might actually have you do a study, for instance, as part of the class. So that's one way that you could sort of see how you liked it and the professor could see how you did at it, and then maybe that turns into something bigger. There's an undergraduate research conference that we run every year where you could pursue a project and then you present it to a wider audience. We've just had that remotely a couple of weeks ago. Somebody asked about the Mind Institute, which is running studies all the time, nonstop. I'm not part of it, so I don't want to speak for them, but I think they have a lot of chances for people to get involved there. So I think just connecting, again, connecting with a faculty member in the area who can tell you more about some of those opportunities is really the best way to get started.
Awesome. Hannah, Jorge, Sarah, did either of you work with a faculty member on any research? No?
I mean, I am kind of right. I am for the thesis program because
Yep.
it's just a research project. And I got into that actually in my first quarter at UC Davis because I found out that my professor had an interest, because I'm an English major. So I found out that my professor had an interest in an author that I really liked. And so I approached her one day and mentioned it, and she said, oh, like, I'll give you reading recommendations if you're really into it. And so I was like, heck yeah. And she gave me like books and stuff and a lot of really cool reading recommendations, and she let me write a smaller paper on it. And then she brought up, you know, like, hey, we have a thesis program. I don't know what you're going to find in the next year, but if come senior year you're still into this, I would be down to advise your thesis. She didn't say it like that, much more professionally, but and here we are. And it was a really cool experience. So my experience with faculty is exactly that. Like, if you can find somebody who's into what you're into, it's a phenomenal experience, and definitely take the opportunity.
Yeah, and it does span all disciplines. I mean, there's a question about tech industry and UX researching and data labs. So the answer to that is yes, 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 and yes. Some of our faculty actually have connection. A lot of our faculty have connection to industry, so they can help. They're doing things in industry. So the answer to that question is an absolute yes. So I'm not sure if the questions are older or not, but so about timing. So I know, Jorge, you're taking an extra year to finish your double major, but by and large, what does the timing look like for transfer students? Maybe for all of you to answer.
It's a really difficult question to answer because everyone has a different kind of idea of what they want to do here at UC Davis. At least for me, I came in wanting to go into law school and like get into politics, but that like changed once I got this job. And so my plan went from a 2-year plan here to another year, another extra year, another major, working this job. So yeah, it's the time can be very unique for every person and every career path.
Yep. Anyone else?
Actually,
Yeah.
I'm just going to
Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt anyone, but I was just going to say, this is something advisors are really good at. You have a lot of areas of advising within the majors at the college level, peer advisors, but they're very good at the kind of jigsaw puzzle of figuring out how to fit in all the stuff that you want to do. It's not always possible, but advising really, really helps with this.
So I can speak to this a little bit because I think I see the question that's asking if you have to do a petition to stay longer than the 2-year time frame. So in terms of thinking about being a transfer student, something that I didn't know, it's less about years and more about units. And so that's why I mentioned the importance of creating an academic plan and things like that, because every major is going to have a number of units that are required for you to complete the major. And so keeping that in mind, that you're kind of massaging your record to, do the most that you can with your academic goals in the time that you are here, recognizing that there is a unit cap at 225 units. There's also, like Claire mentioned, kind of exceptions and things that come into play with some of those policies, but always meet with a major advisor. And as you can see with Jorge, 3 years sometimes is the case for students. Sometimes it's 3 years in a summer session or 2 years in an extra quarter. It looks different for everybody based on their academic goals.
Sam, do you want to unmute yourself? Because
Yeah.
we still have some questions about like, changing majors.
Yeah.
So particularly for like some of the, like specifically this student is interested in learning about changing from psychology to pharm chem.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the process for what it might look like for, from one maybe social science to an impacted or not an impacted, but a science major that maybe has the requirements needed to be able to declare that major.
So I can speak to this on a personal level too. I transferred to Davis in political science. And then I was like, oh, wait, I want to be a history major. So that change happened literally the day of orientation for me. So something that's interesting to know about majors is you can't change your major in the first quarter that you're at Davis. The reason that is we want you to be in good academic standing. And your first quarter, you don't have an academic standing, right? You come into campus with a clean academic slate. So there's no GPA for UC Davis that we can base your transition to another major on. You may, in some majors, Mark kind of mentioned the phrase impacted. If a major is impacted, they may say, oh, you need to complete A, B, and C classes with C or better grades to transfer into our major. So what that means is you stay in your old major for a quarter or so, working with the new major as you decide to transfer in, and then meeting with them regularly to make sure you're meeting all of the requirements that are outlined by that new major. So if you're leaving political, psychology and going to pharm chem, you're meeting with, pharm chem regularly, making sure you're meeting all of their requirements. And then the minute you get the green light from the major to switch, you submit that petition, and it takes about 5 to 10 business days to process it. So it is a fairly easy process. If you're switching within the college, it's again, your college advisor isn't going to change, right? You're in the College of Letters and Science. If you're switching out of the College of Letters and Science, I would always recommend you meet with the new college just to ask them any questions about their graduating requirements and things like that. As you'll notice, I'm saying meet with an advisor. That's always the case, right? Just meet with an advisor if you have those questions.
Great, thank you so much. Also, Sam, sorry, put you on the spot. I guess
it's okay.
We've got a lot of people
Yes.
interested in the IGETSI process. Do you want to just really quick touch on that?
Yeah, definitely. So your IGETSI document is actually in most cases separate from your transcript, right? So normally when you apply to Davis, you send in your transcript. In some cases, community colleges don't attach your IGETSI to that transcript. They just assume that you're going to send a separate request in. So you work with your advisor that at your community college or their registrar's office and request a copy of your IGETSI at the community college. It's your intersegmental transfer articulation form. You'll send it directly to the admissions office at UC Davis, and then they will process it, before, usually by, sometime within fall quarter. And that would be something that you would just contact them and they'll send it over directly. You always want to make sure that any official documents coming to campus come directly from the institution so that they're sealed and official, because we want to make sure we have an official document rather than you receiving it and then sending an unopened IGETSI to our office.
Great. We talked a little bit about this already, so I'm just going to quickly cover the question about housing and whether or not fall what fall is going to look like. The answer to your question is yes, you should still complete the housing application by the deadline. And if anything changes, you will be contacted directly by housing and all the other services that come with that. So if you think you might live on campus or want university housing, I would definitely apply by the deadline. Okay, so there are some questions about time management, I think. So I know a lot of you students are doing multiple things. Hannah, you've got an honors thesis and you're working and you're a full-time student. So this student plans to work and also be involved on campus. Is there time for that and maintain good grades?
Yeah, I say there's definitely time for all of that. The trick for me is that I found was about making lists and figuring out all of these things that I needed to do, and just making lists and breaking down the work. So like not an actual fancy planner, but literally just notes in my phone of this day I'm gonna get this done, and this done, and account for like work and student involvement on campus and all of your homework, and just practicing good time management skills now, because the quarter system goes fast, and so that's just, you know, something you want to start with. But you can definitely do all of it. It's just about, you know, figuring out how you learn best, and how you work best. I don't know if anybody has a follow-up.
I'll add on to this a little bit. I know it's so weird. It's kind of like lagging. But for me, I think with the quarter system, like Hannah said, it is really fast. And when you're transferring, my biggest tip is to take it at one at a time, like incrementally. Like my first quarter, I just took 3 classes, 12 units to maintain full-time status, because I knew I wanted to focus on balancing academics first. And then eventually, as with each quarter, I started adding things and see how that affects my balance, like work-life balance. So I added things, and then eventually my senior year, that's when I did 3 part-time jobs, a major, a minor, with a club all at once, which is a lot. But what really helped me is Google Calendar. So I'm just gonna show, I don't know if it will show on my iPad, but oh, it doesn't show. Okay, but yeah, Google Calendar is super helpful because they have like sections for reminders where you just add things, and then when you do them, like swipe it off and it feels like, oh yes, I did something. And also you can add classes, office hours section. So when you want to see like on each day, like if there's office hours, you just click it and then it will show. But then if you don't really want to go to office hours, you just like unclick it and then you'll have just your regular calendar, which is super helpful. But yeah, Google Calendar is definitely really helpful when you plan all these things.
So we also have a question with a lot of interest. What sources are available for students? Sorry, my landscaper just got here, so I'm sorry. It's really loud. It's right outside my window. What sources are available for students in terms of career advice and job search process? So the Internship and Career Center, somebody want to cover that so I can mute myself?
I'm gonna talk about the ICC a little bit because I love the ICC. A lot of people don't use it, but you should just go there because there's peer advisors for every major, and then they help you make your resume, cover letters. They also have like small workshops, like how to build your LinkedIn profile. They have all kinds of things, and I feel like the students should use this more because it's free. Well, you paid with tuition, but this is free for the students, you know? So yeah, I just like, sometimes I'm bored, I'm between classes, I'm like, let's just go to the ICC and like fix my resume, you know? So the ICC is a really great tool.
Yeah, and there are, I think it's the ICC that runs them, but there are job fairs where employers come to campus and you can go and meet them. There are a lot of outreach programs of different kinds. Also, this goes back a little bit to internship things, but, you know, sort of ways to test drive certain kinds of careers and get experience. Some of these study abroad programs, the program in London has a big internship component that, you know, is also work experience. So the ICC is definitely the key place, but there are, they can connect you with a lot of different kinds of things on campus as well. Also, the English department actually now runs a class in conjunction with the ICC, and I think some other departments do as well, to kind of help you think about how to connect the skills you're getting in that major with skills that you might use in different kinds of careers.
I can also speak to this just because even though I graduated a little while ago, my first job after graduating, I actually found with the help of, at the time it was Aggie Job Link, now it's Handshake. But I found through our specific job posting website at Davis, where employers are specifically looking for Davis graduates. And I even, signed an offer letter for that job like a month or so before spring quarter ended. So I definitely think there's a lot of resources. There are companies that really specifically want to work with Davis grads that are either local or all throughout California and even out of the state. It just takes initiative to go into meeting with ICC and working on your resume and things to kind of put yourself out there. But there's a ton of resources available for careers, jobs, post-graduate.
Actually, if I can say one more thing, it's a related question. Somebody had a question about going to grad school and financial aid for that, which is obviously kind of a related thing. There is a lot of support of different kinds. A lot of kinds of grad school pay you to go, usually because you're teaching or working in a lab. It depends a lot on discipline, how exactly that works, but there are definitely resources there. So I would just say, if you are curious about grad school, to talk to people in the relevant department about how you might go ahead and do that and what kinds of resources there are.
I'm curious, there's a question about it, and so now I'm curious. How do you all feel about taking summer session courses prior to matriculation? Is that critical? Has anybody done it? Did anybody do it before you came to campus? No? No?
I think it depends on your academic plan. For me, like a major and a minor is possible to complete in 2 years, but also depends on you as a student, whether you're capable of handling so much workload. Because, some students prefer taking just 3 classes at a time. It really depends. But I was able to do 5 classes at one point, but that was after like my junior year, like after a whole year transitioning to Davis. Like, don't do it your first year.
I have actually worked with some of the students in Summer Edge and some of those programs, so I hate to be situational again, but it really does depend. I think a lot of students don't necessarily know they can take summer session at UC Davis before they start. I think it's a lack of knowledge. A lot of students don't realize that UC summer session is open to anybody, regardless of whether or not you've been admitted. I mean, people from the community take our summer session classes. So for me at the time when I was a student, I just didn't know it was an option. Looking back, I might have considered it, but there are some classes that maybe are remedial courses that could be a great opportunity to get a head start on, depending on your placement, if you've done placement exams, what that looks like. If you're really wanting to finish an IGETC class or, get a head start on one of those lower division prereqs, there are definitely classes I think that you can take. Keep in mind, it's a much shorter time period than even the quarter system is. So, don't overload yourself, and it's not going to be the same experience as the traditional quarter because the pace is even shorter. And so sometimes students don't necessarily take summer session with us to start just because they're already nervous about going up from a semester to a quarter system, and then going to a 6-week summer session feels even a little bit more overwhelming. So I think it's personality as well too.
Okay. He's gone. The leaf blower is gone. Sorry about that. So we do have some questions about communication. Did any of you students take communication classes? No? No? We do have a communication major, that I can tell you. And it's actually one of the more popular social science majors in the college. Just anecdotally, what I hear about communication is that it's a strong program. It has a couple of different, not emphasis areas, but you can take it in a couple of different ways. But a lot of students who are communication majors are also double majors in design or maybe art or art studio. So we see that a lot with communication majors. I don't know, Sam, is that it? Do you see that too from your
Yes, I would echo that because you know, earlier I mentioned that units play a huge important role in your availability to double major and to do other things. And you'll notice across the board, if you look at some of our 50 plus majors, some majors require 100 units and some require 60. Communication tends to be one of those majors that has a little bit fewer units. So some students can find the time to do a lot of other things along with it. So most often when I see students that are communication majors, they're pursuing that, and like you said, Mark, something else as well too, plus a minor, an internship, and a lot of other things. They tend to be multitaskers, the students that I've worked with. And
Yep. Yep. We do have a couple of questions about computer science. I don't, so, and maybe Sam, you can also answer this too, but when I interviewed the computer science advising team, the major specific advising team, their students graduate in, their first year students graduate in 4 years. Now, I don't know if that automatically translates to transfer students graduating in also in 4 years. What are you seeing, Sam, from the college?
I think it really does depend. You know, one, how quickly you're able to kind of get some of those classes, you know, knocked out in advance. If you've maybe taken some computer science classes at your community college that fulfill prerequisites for that major already, you kind of have a head start in getting into some more you know, upper division computer science courses a little bit earlier than other students. I don't know necessarily if it's a 2-year versus a 3-year. Keep in mind, you know, we also have 2 summer session options, 3 quarters within the year, multiple opportunities to take classes. But there is, you know, a discussion to have with your major advisor about availability and timing. You know, are you, and the one thing about computer science that is unique is there's a lot of lockstep series, right? So A, B, and C. So that's something to keep in mind as well too. That maybe sometimes it's saying that you might take longer because you have to do, you know, ECS 20A, B, and C versus, you know, other students that can take classes out of order. So that is something to speak with your major advisor about when you commit and when you do your IGE advising with that.
Thank you. Yep. Okay, so there's also a question about how many units you should take. So peer advisors, and from your own experience, how many units should students take? And I know they're going to get help. So what, and Sam, like, I know you probably have advice too, since you'll be talking to first year students. Okay. Is that 21 or is that 12? I don't know.
It's 12. It's definitely not 21.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
I would say from an advising perspective, we typically recommend no more than somewhere in the range of 12 to 15 units is average. I did see another question come in about status and things like that. Minimum 12 units is full-time status with UC Davis. Full-time status in a lot of cases coincides with full-time tuition for financial aid. Any aid questions you're going to want to speak with financial aid about directly. But 12 to 15 units is a great place to start, especially because a lot of you are coming in upper division classes in some cases. So keep that in mind as well too. You're already coming in with the university expecting you having a certain area of knowledge in those courses. So pace yourself, I would.
I also like to add, it depends on the student because some students are able to handle like a lot of workload. Because for example, like international students, a lot of my friends, they want to work take up the workload because they're trying to finish their degree faster. Also because international student tuition is a lot more expensive. So they're trying to get the whole requirement, get it over with. So that's why some international students take like 20 plus units in 1 quarter. But it really all depends on you as a student, whether you think you're able to take up that much workload. But it's highly recommended to just take 3 classes, 12 units your first quarter. You won't regret it.
Yeah, I want to tack on to that. Another reason for taking 12 units, so just like about 3 classes your first quarter, is there's going to be an environmental change because you're going from a community college to a 4-year system, and there is like, you're in a new environment and it can be a little bit shocking. And there have been studies on something called transfer shock, which is just kind of like students in a new environment have, like they're trying to adjust to this new environment. And so if you're also inundating yourself with all this extra coursework, that's going to make it even that much harder. So if you're just taking 12 units, then you can just adjust emotionally. Even if you think it's not going to happen, it will. I've seen it happen to friends of mine. So that's another reason to try and take a smaller workload your first quarter.
Claire, did you have something to add?
Yes, you saw me hesitating, sorry. This is really interesting, and I would definitely take the advice of the experts, that is the people who have done it. I've just been hearing in some advising conversations that first-year students are actually now being advised to take 15 units and not to start slow. That turns out actually to be better for their overall progress, but it makes sense to me that that might be different for a transfer student who already has a lot of the work done, right? And where you are adjusting, you already sort of have a way of being in school and you're adjusting to a new way of being in school. But I guess I would say it depends a lot on your circumstances, right? But don't be afraid to ramp up if you feel like you can do it. Also, that is to say, maybe you do the first quarter a little bit lower, but then as the extracurriculars and jobs and everything show, people can handle a lot, so.
You touched a little bit on this earlier, Sarah, about studying abroad. Do you want to mention that again for maybe people who joined us a little bit later and are asking that question about studying abroad?
Yeah, highly recommend it. Oh, sorry, that was like lagging. Yeah, highly recommend studying abroad if that's possible for you. Hopefully you'll be okay then. Also, it's a good way to complete your degree requirements because UC Davis offers a lot. I think it's under Global Affairs, the department that handles study abroad, specifically for UC Davis. But yeah, it's a great way to complete your degree requirement and you get to travel if you love to travel. And
your financial aid goes with you.
Right.
That's a key part too. Yeah, so that's good. So we do have some more questions in here about COVID-19 and the status of the campus in fall. So maybe let's circle back to that again since we've now been talking for about an hour. Claire, do you want to just reiterate the working groups again? And then maybe what it might look like for students who maybe can't get to campus and how we can continue to engage with students and allow them that chance to engage with each other and build community.
Yeah, as Mark was suggesting, there are 2 work groups on campus currently thinking from a lot of different angles about both the purely instructional side of the fall, what classes might look like, what classes can be taught online, what classes can't be taught online, what kinds of hybrid models there might be. Also thinking about operations, how the campus space will work, housing, and all that kind of thing. And I think everyone's doing a balancing act between, we all would love to have the answers to this, but we also want good answers. And so trying to sort of balance all the information that's coming in, all the things we still don't know, making sure everyone's safe. I think we all know that there will be online options in the fall. We know there are going to be people who are ready to enroll and can't be here for whatever reason, health, visas, finances, all kinds of things. So I think the campus will really be ready to work online. We would all love it if it can also work in person. We're hoping that can happen, but putting our efforts into kind of making it the best version of the situation that we have.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, and Sam, you can talk about this too, what your experience is, but I wanted to, because there's a question about all the resources. Basically, all of the resources are still going. I mean, in terms of advising, and Sam can talk about that, but our Internship and Career Center is still seeing students. They are still doing resume help and doing meetings with employers. so yes, internship opportunities are happening, clubs are still meeting. So students are still getting involved, even with mental health counselors and such. So Tim, do you just want to briefly talk about
Yeah.
what it's like from your perspective?
Yeah, I would definitely say all of that is still happening, in terms of meeting with a lot of different departments. I've even heard from some of the students that I've been advising recently that they've actually been able to access some of those places more now, because in some cases when they were on class, they may have been in a class and some of their classes are now pre-recorded. So going to that workshop, they now have the availability to go to it because they can watch their lecture at any time. So definitely, the pre-graduate center is still open, the writing center, a lot of the tutoring places are still open. All of our staff are still functioning. We're just functioning in a different space. The other thing I would say is that, we are still trying to really focus on building community for our students, whether that's in appointments, pointing them to different resources. There's a lot of different ways that you can get involved in community, like some of the peers we're talking about, with clubs and things like that. So I definitely think that, even some students who maybe are a little bit more reserved now because it's virtual might be more inclined to get involved with things. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And we are continuing to build out those resources, and spring has been our opportunity to do that. So if we're doing it in fall, we're just going to do it even better.
Agreed. Sarah, Hannah, Jorge, do you guys want to just really quickly talk about your experience, like accessing faculty, how your classes are going? Have we talked about that yet? Like how you actually feel remote is going? Jorge, do you want to start?
Sure. Let's see. How are my classes going now that they're online? I feel like I'm missing a lot less because sometimes there are professors that that will not allow you to have computers out, and so writing is very helpful in terms of learning. But I can't write fast. I can't write neat. And I grip my pencil too hard. So when I write for an extensive amount of time, my hand ends up hurting. So those have been the small improvements that I've seen or that I've experienced with this way of lecture.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of concrete structure has been an obstacle for me. Yeah, that's pretty much my feedback for that.
Okay.
And
Hannah,
how
how
I've been
about
dealing
you?
with that.
So for me, I feel like my professors in my actual classes that I'm taking did the transition really well. They have pre-recorded lectures, and then there's also because they're English classes, there's still discussion, and I think they found a good way to balance all of that stuff. And it was definitely a lot harder for me at first because I was like, I'm not in class, I have no motivation to do anything. What is this? But then slowly I kind of I made myself go, no, this is what we're doing now. This is what we're doing now. And I kind of got it together. The thesis wasn't too hard to transition because, like I said, we switched to Zoom meetings. I want to give a shout out to the UC Davis library though, because that was a big concern for me because it's research heavy. And so I need a lot of access to materials that are like $100 textbooks that I'm not going to go buy myself. And so our library has a really great thing where you can just request scans of chapters or request documents that aren't even in holdings. And the library has been a lifesaver. So maybe they'll see this and they'll know I appreciate them. But overall, it's been okay.
Great.
I just want to add one little thing. So my computer started malfunctioning. It's like a Surface Pro 4, and it was like very like Zoom was a bit heavy for it. So the screen started to like glitch out. I had to send it to get repaired. But UC Davis was wonderful in that it offered me the ability to request or temporarily loan out one of its laptops. And so that's what I'm using right now to do all my work, my schoolwork, and see y'all on the Zoom call.
That's great. Sarah, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, this quarter felt like it was my first quarter transitioning to Davis, because it's a whole new thing, you know, trying to get into the routine of like going to class through my laptop, because usually when you go to class you're in this environment that's set for studying. So that's the most difficult challenge for me so far, just getting into that zone of like studying. But I think, just, you know, as with everything else, it just takes time to adapt, and it's been going great. Although it's already week 8 now, it's kind of going by really fast.
Thank you for that perspective. That was really helpful. Let's transition back to orientation and registering for classes, since we have some questions about that. Again, there are some questions in the Q&A that I'll address maybe right at the end, because I can go through them quickly. But for most everyone, I think it'll be helpful to hear setting up the 2-year plan and how do you register for classes. So Sam, do you want to just start by talking about Aggie 101, Aggie advising, and like when students will hear about when they get to go through those steps?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of, you know, being able to make plans and really focusing on like time to degree and graduating as a transfer student, you will have opportunities to do so as you know, go through the, you know, intent to register process and move forward in the coming months and start receiving more information. If once you've committed, or if you've already committed, you'll start receiving information about, you know, Aggie 101, which is our online program, orienting you to Davis, to some of the terms about general education and you know, how advising works on campus, the structure of campus. Take notes, pay attention. The campus has done a lot of work in those videos. I think they look amazing and they're really interactive, and it'll be a great opportunity for you to get maybe some of the stuff that we've said now that doesn't make a ton of sense. It'll become even clearer as you continue to watch those videos. The next step for you would be Aggie advising, right? So you're going to take that information that you know through your, you know, Aggie 101 videos, and then apply it to your own academic record. And making a 2-year plan is more or less about you finding a way to complete all of your major requirements. So a great way to take a look at that and what you have coming ahead is just Google UC Davis course catalog and look up some of the catalog information about maybe your major. That'll be something that you, if you have specific questions, you can review that in detail with your major advisor, and then will come the part where you're going to start thinking about registering. A lot of those major related questions, when you have your advising meeting with your major advisor, they'll sit down and talk with you about if you've met prerequisites, what's next for you in the series, and kind of how to move forward with registering for classes when your pass time comes up in the coming months.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Does anyone have experience or know of maybe classmates that have taken the opportunity to go over to the pre-health advising or the health sciences advising office? I want to talk about any of the pre-health stuff, pre-health advising, MCAT prep.
I can talk a little bit about it from just an advising perspective, and then if the peers want to chime in as well. Health Professions Advising, or HPA, because we have an acronym for everything at Davis. HPA is the department on campus that specifically works with students who are pre-health. And that can include dental school, veterinary school, medical school, I mean, any optometry school, anything you name it. They have specific dedicated advisors over there that will work with you on every component of that process. So I would really recommend that you just, you know, I think it's hpa.ucdavis.edu. Just Google HPA UC Davis and you'll find a wealth of information on their website. That's full-time staff positions. They are very dedicated to getting the most recent knowledge about admissions for those programs. They have different companies and schools come in and talk about jobs in those areas or how to apply to those schools. So they're very well versed in helping students achieve that goal of going to a medical program or being in the health professions. And I would really recommend that you engage with them, go to their workshops, get on their email list, and get more information from them when you can.
Great. And a follow-up to the specific question about MCAT. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely internships and research available in the medical field. UC Davis Health System is part of the UC Davis campus. It's just over the causeway. So a lot of students take part in those kinds of opportunities. Before we ring off, since we only have about 5 more minutes, there are some questions in here, like I said, that I will answer as we wrap up, but we do have some minor questions again. And Sarah, did you say you were minoring in psychology? Somebody picked up on that.
Hello.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Sorry, this is like lagging every time I unmute. But yeah, I'm minoring in psychology. And the question was if I like minoring in psychology. Yes, very much. Because classes are so fun and professors are so nice. And since they have a background in psychology, they organize their class in this perfect way. Like because they know how you learn best, you know? So that's why I really like them. And also it's very clear, like you have a syllabus and everything else set by the minute you start class. And one of the things that I like is because with psychology, sometimes they require you to participate in studies and like experiments for credits. And those are so fun. I hope they get to do that next year. So you can, because the Mind Institute is really big here. So yeah, I did that last year. I participated in an experiment where they put like an EEG machine. I didn't know what experiment it was for, but it was like half of my requirement. So I just got it done in like 2 hours. So yeah, it was really fun.
And Sam, you talked earlier about the minor process, like declaring a minor.
Yeah.
Do you want to really do a quick recap?
Yeah, so I saw a question asking if you have to decide on that now. The answer is no. Minoring is usually about 5 upper division classes in that particular area of interest or department. Again, check the course catalog or our website for the list of minors. There's so many options available. So no, it's not something that you have to decide now. 5 upper division classes, if on average you're doing maybe 3 upper division classes a quarter, you could finish a minor easily within 2 quarters. So it is something that you usually declare in the quarter that you're graduating. You just need to make sure that you're meeting the minor requirements with that minor department. So usually it means solid passing grades in all of your classes, and that you're meeting any prerequisites for the minor as well, and that you're not overlapping too many classes between your minor and major. But all of those kind of smaller things can be things you discuss with your advisor when you get ready to declare, to make sure that you're meeting all of the requirements for that minor.
There's a question about Transfer Edge. I don't know much about that program. Does anybody know anything about Transfer Edge? No? Sorry, Antoinette, I don't know the answer to that question. Right, yeah, I don't know about the Transfer Edge program. If you email me afterwards, we can find out for you. How about that? So let's go to the official transcript. If we sent our official transcript that is sealed and the original envelope placed in another envelope, oh, will it still be open received? I don't know the answer to that. Sam, do you know the answer?
Yes, I do know the answer to that question. So whenever you send official documents, so say for example, it sounds like you're asking if you had it sent to your current address or wherever you're staying, if you don't open it and you then mail that unopened document to the admissions office, would that be acceptable? The answer is yes. We just don't want you to, for any reason, open a transcript and try to bring it into the admissions office, or open it and then put in another envelope that you've addressed and sent it in. But yes, any official documents, if you had them sent directly to you, you can put them in another envelope and then send them to admissions. All of that's going to be acceptable.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so before we wrap up, there are a couple of questions in here and I'll let you all chime in, but I'm going to run through them pretty quickly. Deferring admission, yes, students can defer admission, but if you do defer, you must not take any coursework. So you can take a gap year, you can defer, but it's really important to not enroll in any courses. I see head nodding, so I'm okay. So that's the answer to that. I'm sorry about the Transfer Edge. I don't know the answer to that question. Yes, I believe you can still apply to being in the honors program if you weren't invited, but there is an application process for that. for transfer students. Hannah, I know you're doing an honors thesis. What's the difference between doing an honors thesis and being a part of the honors program?
So I can't really speak to the honors program itself because it's not something that I was ever part of, but the honors thesis program is totally separate. It's something that I think most majors have them, but you apply in the fall of your senior year to and you just submit a writing sample, your research proposal, and then if you have a faculty advisor who's willing to advise you, you can mention that too, but you don't have to have that at that point. So it's separate from the honors program. No invitation, you just have to have the GPA requirement, which I think is a 3.5. So that's, yeah, there's no invitation to that, just as long as you have to apply. Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, we are basically out of time. I'm gonna hang around for a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to, so I will read through the last few Q&As and try and answer them quickly live for those who want to stick around. But I do want to thank you all for participating today. I want to thank our panelists, our amazing panelists. Sam, thank you. Samantha, thank you. Claire, thank you so much. Sarah, Hannah, Jorge, thank you guys so much. Thank you. And for those of you who joined us, congratulations. I do have one more slide. Does anybody have any parting words for our students who are on the, before I switch over to my last slide? Yep, congratulations.
Yeah, we hope to see you in the fall, one way or another.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Okay, great. So I'm going to roll it over to my last slide, which has our contact information on it. So you can see our email address there. But we do have a few more sessions coming up this week and next. So you can see them there, how to register at the bottom. That's our website. And I encourage you to contact us through our website or send me an email if you do have any additional questions. Okay. So yeah, join us for those. And for the panelists, thank you. If you need to ring off, please do go ahead. I'm going to grab these last few Q&A questions, and if people are still around, I will answer them. Thank you, guys. Okay, so the defer question, I think I answered that. It's done through My Admission, so if you want to defer, you can apply for that through the My Admission website. You do have to SIR first, but that is that. The honors program we talked about. Okay, so the financial aid question. Yes, there is an appeal process for financial aid, but I don't believe it opens until July. So the answer to your question about can you get your results before then? No. However, they do have an expected, they have a net price calculator on the financial aid website. So if you use the net price calculator tool with your new information, you might get a sense of what your financial aid package will look like once the changes are made. So that might give you an idea of what a new financial aid package could be for you, even though the application doesn't open until July. Okay. Preparing for postgraduate, that's doing well in your classes, conducting research, doing internship, getting involved, being awesome student employees like Sarah and Jorge, getting that kind of experience. That's going to be excellent for postgraduate work. If you're definitely going to go to grad school, I would suggest getting involved in research. That's probably your best bet, would be to do research. On-campus housing. So on-campus housing, if you live on campus, you're billed directly through student accounting. And so your financial aid goes in and you're charged for housing. And so your aid covers that as well as your tuition and fees. in general, on-campus housing tends to be a little bit more expensive than living off campus. Right, Sarah? Right, Jorge? Yeah, so you'll probably be charged a little bit more. And of course, Sarah, yeah, you have something to say about that? Please.
I think, yeah, off campus, you can find way cheaper housing because also people are always looking through Facebook groups or from friends' contacts. Yeah, that's what I know.
Yeah, and you can find, right, so on-campus housing has rules for how many students can live in a particular room or apartment. And apartments do as well, but it might be cheaper to have 6 people in a 3-bedroom apartment than like 4 people in a 2-bedroom apartment or 2 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. So there are ways to make it cheaper, but if you're living on campus, your financially covers it. And if you're living off campus, financially covers it as well. We just don't bill you through your student accounting. You'll get a refund and then you'll write your check to your apartment complex. Okay, the quarter system is fast. Okay, Sarah, Jorge, you guys came from other systems. Did you come from semester schools?
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
Was it a shock?
So I took a first year seminar with Mike Valenzuela, and he kind of, every single time we met, he kind of emphasized like, okay, we are 25% done with the quarter. And like that kind of always brought it into perspective of how much time passed, but also how much time we had left in the quarter. And so before I knew it, we were like almost into finals, and he's like, yeah, 90% of the quarter has passed, and you got to get on it. Like it was definitely a shock.
Yeah, it was for the first time, but I've come to like it, like the fast pace, because it makes it very structured. Because with semesters, it's like 14 weeks, and then let's say like in spring semester, you have that spring break in between. So like for us, we're starting a new quarter, spring quarter. So we kind of don't have to, for me, like we don't have to carry all the information from like before spring break. So you're starting a whole new thing, right? And also because it's just 10 weeks, you kind of know when your midterms are going to happen, and then you can kind of plan it way better. I feel like there's more structure, but it's faster.
Great. It is faster, yeah. But I liked it too. I was a student here. I didn't say that at the beginning. I was a student here too. Okay, so a few more questions. Managing classwork, I think we talked about that quite a bit. It's just good time management, right? And the campus offers resources. Google, you have Google Calendar, Schedule Builder, and some of those things that really help, right? Yeah, it's totally doable to be a full-time student and do an internship and conduct research, or also have a job like our awesome panelists here.
Totally possible. Just manage your time really well.
Yeah. We do not, as far as I know, offer any 5-year master's program, like a dual program, a BS or an undergraduate into a master's program. I think we had one in stats, but we did away with it. I don't believe we have any more. Oh, okay. So summer sessions. So, oh, Vi, we've been emailing. So the answer to your question is, you could be looking at what your major is, and we have peer advisors, so they might want to chime in. But if you know what your declared major is, you can be looking at what the requirements are for that major. And so that you can be thinking about that, especially if you have any prereqs that might not be done just yet. Lower division classes that you want to get out of the way. So if you're thinking about coming for summer, or if you're going to take summer at your community college, that might be something you want to look at. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
With summer classes?
Yeah, like just taking summer. Are there good classes to take for summer? That might be major specific, but
I think that for summer, a common comment that I've heard from friends who take them is to take like not really advanced ones, not up per divisions, because they might be a bit challenging given the 6 weeks you only have to do them. So if you're taking like Econ 1A, which is a lower division, that's something that I think is possible to do in summer and a fun one. I love Econ.
Yeah, I took 2 upper division poli-sci classes in summer session 2 of 2019, and it was tough. And yeah, it's I would definitely have, with that knowledge in mind, it's definitely going to inform my decision if I ever consider doing summer session again.
Yeah, the quarter system is fast, but summer session is really fast.
Yeah.
Registration dates, are they different for everyone? Yes, you'll get a pastime. You'll do it over the summer after you do Aggie 101 and Aggie advising. You'll get a window of time. You'll actually get 2 windows of time. And then you'll have some open time to make some changes. And then moving forward, you get a registration date depending on how many units you have. It's really based on how many units you have. So it mostly comes out to like what class level you are, but it depends on how many units you have. It puts you higher or earlier in the registration process.
Yeah, the pastimes can be a bit annoying because like let's say you already have a schedule planned and then because of your pastime you couldn't get in because of the wait list, but it's also like a bonding event with everyone who has late pastime. So like, oh, we can't get to our classes, but eventually you will, as long as you just keep on the wait list and hopefully get a PTA if the professor offers.
Yeah.
PTA is a permission to add, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's always important to have backups to your backups. I know I had, with the coronavirus thing, one of my classes got canceled. They sent an email out saying, "Oh, don't panic, it's not canceled." And then they were like, "Wait, no, it is canceled." And so I'm like, "Y'all, don't do this to me." So because I had to get another class. But yeah.
All right. So we talked about that. The Bachelor's of Science versus the Bachelor of Arts emphasis. Well, one is Bachelor of Arts, which is more of a humanities focus. One is more science focused. So you'll have some science coursework that is required for a Bachelor's of Science degree. How do you declare it? It really depends on the major. You declare either coming in, or if you're, say, like psychology, you declare it through your major, like you work through your major advisor to determine the track that you want to be on, whether it's the BS with a biological emphasis or the Bachelor of Arts. So you declare it by working with your major advisor, but it tends to be more major specific because most majors don't have a dual option for that.
Yeah, as peers, we were taught to memorize this BS-AB difference, but AB you need a foreign language requirement, and then BS you need 90 units in natural sciences.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then
there's also the BAS.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the BAS that has both.
Yeah. So if you're double majoring, if you're getting a Bachelor of Arts in, say, history and a Bachelor's of Science in pharmaceutical chemistry, you graduate with a BAS. How many units do you need to receive your degree? It's major specific. Each major has its specific requirements and degree requirements. You need 180 units overall to graduate from the campus, and that it will include your community college units, but converted to quarter units, not semester units, but quarter units. And it usually goes from 60 to 90, right? Like a year is about 60 units, turns into about 90 quarter units is a rough estimate on that. You do not pay by unit for classes. You pay full-time tuition or part-time tuition. And full-time is 12 units or more. Any info on how the ARC will be affected next year? Again, so like how the campus is open or not, or in different versions of that, we just don't know yet. So whether or not the ARC, the Activities and Recreation Center, will be open, if the campus is open, it could be open, but it could be open, you know, minimally or with a lot of restrictions. So there's that. Same would be the case for any of the dining options on campus. We just don't know yet, unfortunately. Can you reasonably be financially stable while pursuing a PhD without needing an extra job? Well, so the question is, can you be reasonably be financially stable while pursuing a PhD without needing an extra job? I think you mean a bachelor's of science, or I hope you do, because we're talking about undergraduates. And a lot of students do work, right, guys? But not all of them do. Some students receive financial aid and they get work study, so they get jobs that offer work study, but not all students need jobs on campus. Yeah? Yeah. Oh, work study opportunities. Yes, there are work study opportunities available. Yes, absolutely. Resources for students with disabilities. Yes, absolutely. The Student Disability Center. You can contact them now, actually, if you need accommodation for anything, or if you just want to learn about their resources. sdc.ucdavis.edu, I think, is their website. You can switch majors. Is it easy to switch majors for transfer students? It's major specific, right?
Yeah, depends on the major.
Yeah, it really will depend on the major and what the requirements are for that major to change into that major.
Yeah, because some majors, like you have to take it in order and you can't take it simultaneously. So it might take you longer. So it really depends.
Yeah. You can take prereqs at the community college, but prior to matriculation. And you can, I guess you can also take some even maybe during the summer.
Yeah, the only thing is that there is a limit to the amount of units you can transfer from community college, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be the only thing to look out for, and to maybe speak with your college advisor about.
Absolutely. Yes, you can double major in statistics and computer science. Yes, you can do that. They just double majoring, I think we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you cannot overlap. You can't, 80% of the coursework, the upper division coursework must be unique for each degree. So you can only overlap 20%, or 20% of your courses, only up to 20% of your coursework can overlap for two different majors to be able to declare them both.
Just 2 classes, I think.
I'm sorry?
Again, that's probably something that is better, like, ask the advisor, just because.
Yeah.
Yep. Environmental communication courses. I don't know specifically about environmental communication, but we have really strong environmental sciences and we have communication in the College of Letters and Science. Environmental sciences is over in College of Ag and Environmental Sciences. I would say there is a very good overlap. So you could, I'm sure you could get that experience. We have a lot more questions, but we really have to wrap up. I would suggest, if we didn't answer your question and you're still interested, to go ahead and email me. My email address is, I wish I could put it in here. Well, if you can actually reach me through the College of Letters and Science website. So if you go to lettersandscience.ucdavis.edu, you can reach me through the college website. If you just go to advising or to the college About Us page, you can reach me. Yeah, so I guess we'll stop there because now my other phone is ringing. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all those questions. There are so many more questions. We are just out of time. This is recorded. It will be recorded and we will link it to our website. But like I said, if you have any additional questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to ask. Sarah, Jorge, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you guys for coming.
Stay
Really
safe,
appreciate it.
everyone.
Again, if you have any other questions, let us know. Otherwise, I hope we will see you in the fall.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.